I clicked through another batch of emails, deleting sponsorship requests I'd never accept, energy drinks that tasted like battery acid, tactical gear that'd fall apart after one real expedition. Standard stuff for a channel my size. Then I saw it. Subject line, Private Expedition Opportunity, $500,000. Spam, obviously. I almost deleted it without reading, but I didn't. The email was brief, professional. A Russian businessman named Mikhail Petrov wanted to hire me for a week-long film project in Russia. $500,000 for the job, with another $500,000 possible upon satisfactory completion. No details on what exactly I'd be filming or where. I read it twice, then a third time. The money was absurd, more than I'd make in 2 years of brand deals and video revenue combined. That kind of cash would clear my mortgage. Set up a real retirement fund. Let me be pickier about projects. Too good to be true meant exactly that. Too good to be true. I Googled Mikhail Petrov and found almost nothing. A few mentions in tech investment articles. A blurry photo from some conference in Dubai. No social media presence, no Wikipedia page. Just someone rich enough to stay practically invisible online. I replied anyway, asking for more information. Expected nothing back. Got an answer in 20 minutes. Mr. Petrov would be in Moscow next week. He suggested meeting at the Metropole Hotel to discuss details in person. The email included flight details, business class, and confirmation that a suite would be reserved in my name. All I had to do was say yes. I sat back in my chair and looked at my monitor. 10 years of building my channel, testing myself against the worst conditions on Earth, teaching others how to survive. All of it based on careful planning and risk assessment. Nothing about this passed any rational safety check, but I found myself typing, "I'll be there anyway." The Metropole was everything I'm not. Polished marble, crystal chandeliers, staff that looked way too fancy. I showed up in my cleanest jeans and a sweater without holes, feeling like I didn't belong. The concierge directed me to a private dining room on the second floor. I knocked twice, then entered. Mikhail Petrov sat alone at a table that could have seated 12. He was in his 50s with gray hair at his temples and wore a suit that probably cost more than my car. He didn't stand when I entered. "Mr. Walker," he said, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Thank you for coming." I sat. A waiter came out of nowhere, poured water from a crystal pitcher, then left. "I've watched many of your videos," Mikhail said. His English was perfect, just the slightest accent. "Your Alaskan survival series was particularly impressive." "Thanks," I said. "Now maybe you can tell me why I'm here." He smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. "Direct. Good. I appreciate that quality." He placed his hands flat on the table. "My company has developed prototype survival gear, very advanced. We need someone with your expertise to test it under authentic conditions." "What kind of gear?" "A comprehensive system. Communication devices, shelter components, navigation tools. The entire package weighs less than 5 kilograms. That caught my attention. 5 kilos for a complete survival system was revolutionary, if it worked. "Where would this test happen?" I asked. "A remote area in eastern Russia, uninhabited, challenging terrain." He sipped his water. "We would transport you there, provide the equipment, and extract you after 7 days." "And you're willing to pay $500,000 for this?" "The first payment of $250,000 has already been transferred to your account." He slid his phone across the table, showing a banking app with a completed transaction. "Consider it a gesture of good faith." I checked my own phone. The money was there, $250,000 just like that. "Why me?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "There are plenty of survival experts, military types with more advanced training." "Your communication skills, your ability to explain technical concepts clearly to your audience." He paused. "And yes, your social media presence. If our equipment performs well in your hands, The marketing value is considerable. Something didn't add up. No company pays this much for gear testing, not even for the publicity. But the money in my account was real. What's the catch, Mr. Petrov? The location must remain confidential. You cannot bring your own equipment, only what we provide, and you must agree to our editing approval before publishing any content about the experience. Red flags, all of them. But that money. I need to think about it, I said. Of course. He signaled, and a man entered carrying a folder. The contract is here for your review. Take until tomorrow morning. He stood, extending his hand. I hope you'll accept, Mr. Walker. This could be quite beneficial for both of us. I shook his hand. Cold, dry grip, like pressing against stone. Back in my suite, I read the contract 3 times. The legal language was dense but straightforward. The confidentiality clauses were strict but not unreasonable for prototype testing. The payment terms matched what he'd said. I paced the room until midnight, weighing options. The smart move was to walk away. Too many unknowns. Too many restrictions. But that money would change everything for me. Security I'd never had. Freedom to do the projects I wanted instead of what sponsors demanded. At 1 a.m., I set up my camera on the desk. Hit record. My name is James Walker, I said to the lens. It's currently 1:07 a.m. on March 10th. I'm in Moscow at the Metropole Hotel. I explained the offer, described Mikhail, detailed the contract terms. If you're watching this, it means I didn't deactivate the scheduled upload. If I don't enter my password in 8 days, this video goes public. If that happens, something went wrong. I saved the file, uploaded it to my private cloud storage, and scheduled it. Then I signed the contract. Morning came, with gray light filtering through expensive curtains. I packed my few belongings, went downstairs, and found Mikhail waiting in the lobby with another man. Tall, military posture, watchful eyes. No introduction was offered. You've made a wise decision, Mr. Walker, Mikhail said, taking the signed contract. Andre will assist with our travel arrangements. I followed them outside to a waiting car, the rational part of my brain still screaming that this was a mistake. But I'd faced down blizzards, predators, flash floods. I'd survived where others hadn't. Whatever Mikhail had planned, I was confident in my abilities. As we drove away from the hotel, I realized I had no idea where we were going. Just another risk in what was rapidly becoming the strangest job I'd ever taken. The stairs to Mikhail's private jet caught the early morning light. I climbed them without looking back at Moscow. No flight attendant greeted me at the door. Just Andre, standing with his back straight and looking right at me. He pointed to a leather seat without saying anything. I put my small duffel in the overhead compartment and sat down. The cabin smelled new, all polished wood and expensive leather. 4 seats faced each other around a glossy table with more single seats toward the back. Mikhail was already sitting across from me, typing on his laptop. Coffee, Mr. Walker? He asked without looking up. Black, if you have it. Andre put a cup in front of me, then sat where he could see both the cabin and me. His eyes never stayed in one place, always moving, always checking things out. You could tell he had military training by the way he moved. How long is the flight? I asked after several minutes of silence. Long enough, Mikhail replied, still focused on his screen. I suggest you rest. The testing location requires physical endurance. That was the last thing he said for hours. The jet flew eastward while Mikhail worked, and Andre watched. I switched between staring out the window at endless Russian landscape and closing my eyes, never quite sleeping. Trust doesn't come easily, especially not at 30,000 feet with 2 men I barely knew. We landed at a strip barely deserving the name airfield. Just a paved runway surrounded by dense pine forest with a single hangar. No terminal. No other planes. No sign announcing where we were. A heavy-duty SUV was parked beside the hangar. Andre loaded our few bags while Mikhail made a brief call. I checked my phone. No service. I expected that, but it still made me nervous. "Your phone won't work here," Mikhail said, noticing. "The equipment we're testing includes communication devices. Outside technology would contaminate the results." I pocketed my useless phone and climbed into the SUV's back seat. Andre drove with Mikhail beside him. The dashboard clock showed 2:17 p.m., but I had no idea what time zone we were in. The drive took hours. The roads went from rough to gravel, then turned into barely visible tracks through thicker and thicker forest. Pine trees changed to bigger trees with huge trunks that blocked most of the sky. It got colder as we went uphill, though it was hard to tell for sure since I couldn't see the horizon. Andre drove like he knew exactly where he was going, never stopping to think at any turns. He'd been here before, probably many times. We got to the hunting lodge when it started getting dark. It was made of dark wood with a steep roof built for snow and looked sturdy but not fancy. Smoke was coming from a stone chimney. Someone was already there. "Home for tonight," Mikhail said, stepping out of the vehicle. "Tomorrow your real work begins." Inside, the lodge matched its exterior. Functional, not fancy. A main room with heavy wooden furniture and animal heads mounted on walls. A kitchen area stocked with basic supplies. A hallway led to what I assumed were bedrooms. An older man nodded to Mikhail from beside the fireplace, then disappeared through a side door without introduction. The warmth from the fire didn't quite reach the corners of the room. "Your quarters are the second door on the right," Mikhail said. "Dinner in 1 hour. Andre will brief you afterward." My quarters held a narrow bed, a wooden chair, and a small lamp on a nightstand. The window looked out on darkness and trees. I sat on the bed, bouncing slightly to test the mattress. Firm, almost hard. I'd slept on worse. Dinner was simple but substantial. Venison stew, black bread, no alcohol. Mikhail ate quickly, speaking only to Andre in rapid Russian that I couldn't follow. The older man didn't join us. When they finished, Mikhail left without explanation, and Andre motioned for me to follow him to the main room. A worn backpack sat on the central table. Faded green canvas, standard size, with a patch reading "Venture Beyond" sewn above the main pocket. It looked like something you'd find at an army surplus store, not revolutionary survival tech. "This is the equipment?" I asked. Andre nodded. "Mr. Petrov says you should familiarize yourself with it tonight." I unzipped the main compartment. Empty. I checked every pocket, zipper, and compartment. Nothing except a small inner pocket containing what looked like a metal disc about the size of a poker chip. "There's nothing in it," I said, looking up. Andre's face remained expressionless. "Mr. Petrov says its properties will reveal themselves during testing." I took a closer look at the backpack. The material felt weird, light but somehow thick at the same time. The seams were too perfect compared to normal backpacks. There weren't any tags showing where it was made or what it was made of. Even the zippers worked super smoothly. "What exactly am I testing?" I asked. "Mr. Petrov will explain in the morning." Andre headed for the door. "We leave at 4 a.m. I suggest you sleep now." Sleep didn't come easily. The bed was uncomfortable, the room too quiet after Moscow's constant noise. My mind kept circling back to the empty backpack. $500,000 to test an empty backpack in the Russian wilderness. Nothing added up. The knock on my door came at 3:30 a.m. The lodge was cold, the fire burned down to embers. I dressed quickly in layers, base thermal, flannel shirt, heavy wool sweater, waterproof outer shell. The clothing I'd brought was high-quality gear I trusted, unlike the mysterious backpack. Breakfast was waiting. Oatmeal, dried fruit, strong black coffee. I ate on autopilot, fueling up for whatever lay ahead. Andre and Mikhail entered as I finished, both dressed for serious outdoors work. "Ready, Mr. Walker?" Mikhail asked. "As I'll ever be," I replied, shouldering the empty backpack. It felt unnaturally light against my back. We left the lodge in the dark, our headlamps showing us the way through the thick forest. Andre walked first, going pretty fast like he had a time in mind to get where we were going. Mikhail was behind him, and I was last. Nobody talked. Walking got harder when the sun came up. The ground started going up and down more, with rocks sticking out of the dirt. Andre would sometimes change direction randomly, going away from what looked like easy paths to make new ones. By mid-morning, I could tell we weren't taking a straight route. We weren't exactly going in circles, but we definitely weren't going straight either. Most people wouldn't catch it, but with my outdoor experience, I noticed. We were heading somewhere specific, but in a way that would make it hard for anyone to find their way back alone. It's what you do when you don't want people coming back without someone showing them. After 6 hours, we got to a small clearing. It wasn't natural. Someone had cut down the trees to make a round space about 30 feet wide. All the stumps were gone. The ground was mostly flat with some small plants and snow patches in the shady spots. Mikhail looked at his watch, then turned to me. "This is where you'll conduct the test," he said. "And what exactly am I testing?" I asked again. "Survival, Mr. Walker." He gestured to the backpack. "That equipment is designed for extreme conditions. You're the perfect subject to evaluate its effectiveness." "It's empty," I said flatly. "Is it?" Mikhail's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Perhaps you haven't activated it correctly." Before I could respond, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a satellite phone, compact, military grade by the look of it. "One number is programmed," he said, handing it to me. "Use it only for genuine emergencies. Andre will return in exactly 7 days to collect you and your findings." 7 days? Here. I looked around the nondescript clearing. "What's special about this location?" "Everything you need is in that pack," Mikhail said, ignoring my question. "I look forward to your results." With that, he nodded to Andre, and they turned to leave. "Wait," I called. "What about water sources? Game trails? Basic orientation?" Mikhail paused, but didn't turn back. "You're a survival expert, Mr. Walker. This is what I'm paying you for." They disappeared into the trees, footsteps getting quieter until I couldn't hear anything anymore. I stood alone in the clearing, holding a satellite phone and wearing an empty backpack. The temperature dropped as clouds moved in, blocking the weak sun. I checked out my surroundings more carefully. The clearing offered little protection from weather. No water source visible, no obvious game trails, just trees, brush, and silence. I pulled out my survival knife, the one item I'd insisted on bringing, and marked a tree at the edge of the clearing. Then I walked around the area, noting landmarks and features. This confirmed what I'd thought during our hike. We'd approached from the east, doubled back to the north, circled to approach from the west, then cut back again. Deliberate confusion. I was exactly where Mikhail wanted me to be. The question was why. The backpack sat on a fallen log where I'd placed it. Ordinary looking, empty except for that metal disc. I picked it up again, turning it over in my hands. $500,000. Whatever game Mikhail was playing, I was already deep in it. Now I just had to figure out the rules. I picked up the backpack again, weighing it in my hands. Empty or not, something wasn't right about it. The material felt too smooth, almost slick under my fingers, but not quite. I'd tested hundreds of pieces of survival gear over the years. This didn't match anything on the market. The seams were the first thing I noticed. They didn't look stitched so much as fused, with no visible thread. I ran my thumb along the edge where the straps connected to the main body. No reinforcement points, no double stitching. Just a seamless join that shouldn't have been possible with normal manufacturing. The zippers moved without resistance or sound. No fabric caught in the teeth, no stopping at the corners. I'd paid good money for high-end packs that didn't zip half as well after 3 years of use, let alone new. I emptied my own supplies onto the fallen log: water bottle, jerky, compass, the satellite phone Mikhail had given me. Basic stuff to keep me alive until I figured out what the hell was happening. Then I went through the backpack again, checking every pocket. Still empty, except for that metal disc. I pulled it out of the inner pocket, about the size of a poker chip but heavier, made from some kind of polished metal that didn't quite look like steel or aluminum. No markings, no seams, just a perfectly smooth disc that reflected the fading sunlight. The sun was dropping fast. In these places, once it started going down, darkness came quick. I had maybe an hour of good light left, and temperatures would drop soon after. I needed shelter, water, and a fire. The basics of survival no matter where you found yourself. I pocketed the disc and put on the empty pack. Might as well use it, even if it held nothing. Then I started gathering firewood from the edge of the clearing, marking each tree I passed with my knife. The forest floor was damp but not soaked, and I found enough dry branches under the thicker parts of the trees. By the time I'd built a small fire pit and stacked wood nearby, the shadows covered the entire clearing. The temperature was already dropping. I'd need more substantial shelter for the night, something to block the wind at minimum. That's when I felt it, warmth against my thigh where I'd pocketed the disc. Not body heat, something else. I pulled it out. The metal was glowing faintly blue around the edges, giving off a steady beat of light. As I looked at it, the glow got stronger. "What the hell?" I muttered. The disc got warmer in my palm, not burning, but definitely heating up. The blue light spread from the edges toward the center and then reacted to my touch by shooting upward. I dropped it. The disc hit the ground, but the light didn't stop. It grew outward, making a perfect ball of spinning blue light about 3 feet across, floating a few inches above the forest floor. I backed away, nearly tripping over the log. This wasn't normal tech. This wasn't some fancy new GPS or emergency beacon. My hand went to my pocket, pulling out my phone. If I was about to die from some experimental Russian weapon, at least I'd leave evidence behind. I started recording, filming the glowing ball as it slowly spun around. "Day 1 in the test location," I said quietly to the camera. "Given an empty backpack with some kind of device concealed in it. The device has activated and is producing this effect." The orb started spinning faster and the middle cleared up like someone was wiping a window. Through it I could see trees. Not the pine and fir around me, but different trees. Huge trunks with weird ridged bark. The light was different too, darker and more purple than the blue-gray evening light in my clearing. I walked around the orb, staying back a bit. The view into the other place moved as I moved, showing different angles of the same strange forest. Because that's what it was, not just a different forest, but one that looked wrong. Everything seemed the wrong size. The colors just weren't right. The device appears to be projecting some kind of, I don't know, a window or screen showing another location. I don't recognize the type of forest or the vegetation. I picked up a stick and cautiously approached. The orb didn't react to me. It just hung there, a perfect sphere of light with a window to somewhere else. I extended the stick toward it, expecting resistance. The stick went through. Not like pushing through water or even air. It simply disappeared once it crossed the edge of the orb, visible only on the other side in that strange forest. I pulled it back. The stick reappeared, intact. I tried again, pushing it further through, then pulling it back. Same result. "It seems to be some kind of portal," I said to the phone. Even saying it out loud sounded ridiculous. Portals weren't real. They were science fiction. But then again, so was whatever I was looking at. The temperature kept dropping. My breath now made small clouds in front of my face. The sky was getting dark blue, with stars starting to peek through the clouds. It would be below freezing in a few hours. I had some basic supplies, but not enough to survive cold weather for long. My layers would help, but without good shelter, one night of really cold temperatures could kill me. I needed to decide quickly. I put the phone back in my pocket, but left it recording. Evidence. Whatever happened. The satellite phone Mikhail had given me felt heavy in my other pocket. It had just one number programmed. Emergency only, he'd said. But what counted as an emergency? A weird glowing portal showing up in the middle of nowhere? I took it out and looked at the simple display. If I called, what would I even say? And who would answer? Mikhail? Andre? Someone else? The cold got worse. Wind picked up, blowing dead pine needles across the clearing. My small pile of firewood wouldn't last the night, and the darkness would make getting more wood hard and dangerous. The orb kept floating there, its light now the brightest thing in the clearing. The forest on the other side looked warmer. Not definitely safe, but at least not freezing. I checked my watch. Just past 6 p.m. Andre wouldn't return for 7 days. I went up to the orb again, looking at it more carefully. The edge of the portal had a clear line between here and there. The light flashed when I moved. Was that just random? Or was it reacting to me? The metal disc was still on the ground where I'd dropped it. I picked it up carefully. It wasn't glowing anymore, like all its energy now powered the orb. It felt cool again when I touched it. I thought about what to do. Option 1. Stay here. Build the best shelter I could in the dark. Save my supplies and try to make it 7 days until Andre came back. Option 2. Use the satellite phone. Call the emergency number and hope someone comes to get me. But that meant failing the test, whatever the test actually was. $500,000 gone. Option 3. Step through the portal to the other place. Face unknown dangers, but at least not freeze to death right away. None of them were good choices. All had big risks. I packed everything back into my pockets. The satellite phone, my regular phone, still recording, the metal disc. I put on the empty backpack that wasn't really empty. Something about it had created this portal, and I wasn't going to leave it behind. Then I went up to the orb one last time. The other side looked less like Earth every minute. The shapes were odd. The plants didn't move right. If I stepped through, I might not be able to come back. But I'd made my choice the moment the temperature dropped below freezing and my fire wouldn't start in the wet wood. I'm not a test subject, I said to my recording phone. I'm James Walker. I've survived the Amazon, the Arctic, and the Australian outback. I'll survive whatever's on the other side of this too. I took a deep breath and stepped forward into the blue light. The world swirled around me, colors all running together. My stomach lurched. My ears popped painfully. Then it stopped. I stood in the weird forest I'd seen through the window, surrounded by huge trees with bark that glowed slightly. The air felt thick, almost humid, and smelled like plants I'd never smelled before. Behind me, the portal flickered once and disappeared. The blue orb was gone, and with it, my way back. Each breath came heavier than it should have. The air pushed back against my lungs, thicker than what I was used to, like breathing at high altitude, but wetter. I took a few careful steps forward, boots sinking slightly into soil that felt spongier than normal earth. My hand went to my pocket, pulling out my phone. Still recording. I switched to the flashlight function, sweeping the beam across my surroundings. Portal's gone, I said quietly to the camera. I'm somewhere else. Somewhere else didn't begin to cover it. The trees around me went up higher than my light could reach. Their trunks were wider than cars, with bark that flickered with faint lines of bluish light. Not reflected light. Internal. Like something living just under the surface. I moved the camera upward, trying to capture the massive branches above. Through gaps in the enormous leaves, I caught glimpses of the darkening sky. Then froze. 2 moons hung there, one larger, pale yellow, the other smaller with a bluish tint. Both partially visible through breaks in the tree cover. Not in Russia anymore, I whispered. I realized what this meant right away. This wasn't some hidden forest in Siberia. This wasn't even Earth. My brain tried to come up with explanations. Maybe I was seeing things, or someone built a fake environment, or I was drugged. But seeing 2 moons in the sky shot down each idea. I needed to be practical. Staying alive came first. Freaking out about existence could wait. Water, shelter, safety. The basics stay the same, no matter where you end up. I'd need all three before I could figure out what was happening and how to get back. The weather felt okay. Not hot, not cold. Kind of like early fall back home. It was a bit humid, but not too bad. The plants on the ground gave off a faint glow, making enough light that I could turn off my phone flashlight to save battery. I bent down to check out the dirt, rubbing it between my fingers. It fell apart like peat moss, but then came back together, almost like it was alive. The plants around me were nothing like what I knew. Weird spiral ferns and vines that seemed to breathe. I heard something moving through the plants to my left. I froze. Whatever made that noise wasn't small. More rustling, getting closer now. Multiple things. I backed up slowly toward the biggest tree and pressed against the glowing bark. No sudden moves. No sounds. Just steady breathing as I looked into the dark. They came out from between the trees about 90 feet away. 3 of them, moving smoothly like wolves, but built wrong. Their bodies were too long, with legs bent at weird angles. Their long skulls had branching antlers that seemed to swallow the light instead of shine in it. They moved as a group, sniffing the ground, making soft, clicking sounds to each other. I held my breath when one lifted its head and flared its nostrils. It looked my way, its eyes catching the tree glow like black mirrors. For 5 seconds, nobody moved. Then the leader turned away and kept going through the trees. The others followed, their strange legs carrying them quietly into the distance. I waited 5 full minutes after they left, counting in my head. When I was sure they were gone, I moved away from the tree, staying low. Standing still on the ground wasn't a good plan. I needed to get up high for a better view and safer spot. The closest tree I could climb was about 50 feet away. Not one of the giants, but a smaller one with low branches spiraling up. I walked toward it, stepping carefully to stay quiet. The bark felt rough but not sharp as I pulled myself onto the first branch. Climbing came easy after years of fieldwork, and I made my way up without problems. 20 feet up, I found a spot where branches met that could hold my weight. I sat in the natural seat, back against the trunk, legs stretched along a branch. The empty backpack felt awkward behind me. I took it off, planning to use it as a pillow while I figured out what to do next. As I fixed the straps, my fingers felt what seemed like a seam that shouldn't be there. Not on the outside or inside, but between layers of the material. I pressed it, feeling for a catch. Something clicked. The backpack shook in my hands. I almost dropped it, catching it just in time as it started to change shape. The fabric changed, flowing into a new shape. Pockets appeared where there weren't any before. The straps pulled in, then came back out stronger and with padding. "What the hell?" I muttered as the transformation completed. What had been an empty shell now weighed several pounds, filled with parts I couldn't even name. The main compartment had what looked like water purification tablets, but with a weird shine no Earth-made tablets had. Another pocket held small metal discs like the one that made the portal, but smaller and marked with different colored bands. From a side pocket that definitely wasn't there before, I pulled out what looked like a wrist device, a band made of the same stuff as the backpack with a flat metal surface where a watch would go. I turned it over in my hands, looking for buttons or switches. Finding none, I slipped it onto my left wrist. The band quickly adjusted to fit just right. The metal face lit up, showing a holographic display 6 inches above my wrist. Symbols I couldn't read scrolled by, then changed into simple icons, droplets, what looked like a thermometer, a compass, and other readings I couldn't figure out. I tapped the water droplet icon. The display changed, showing a map with flashing blue dots at different distances from a central point, which I figured was where I was standing. Water sources, I realized aloud. It's showing me water. I tried the thermometer icon next. Numbers appeared. 18.3 degrees C ambient temperature, 37.1 degrees C body temperature, 22.6% oxygen content. That last reading explained the thickness of the air. Oxygen levels lower than Earth normal, but still breathable. The next icon resembled a shield. When I tapped it, the device made a quiet sound. A transparent bubble formed around me, extending about 3 feet in all directions. The edges had a slight shine, but it was mostly invisible. A snapping twig below caught my attention. I looked down to see one of the antlered creatures directly beneath my tree, sniffing with its long neck pointed up. It was looking right at me. I held perfectly still, barely breathing, certain it would see me. But after a few moments, the creature turned away, confused. It paced in a circle, sniffing again at the base of the tree, then wandered off into the forest. The bubble had hidden me, not just visually, but masked my scent too. I began examining the rest of the backpack's contents with new understanding. This wasn't standard survival gear. Every component served a specific purpose for this environment. The metal discs, the purification tablets, the readings on my wrist display, all calibrated for this world, not Earth. I suddenly realized the truth. I wasn't testing equipment at all. I was the test subject. Mikhail hadn't sent me to evaluate prototype survival gear. He'd sent me to see if a human could survive here, in whatever alien world lay beyond the portal. I wasn't the first either. The creature's behavior suggested they recognized human scent. They'd hunted people before. I leaned back against the tree trunk, the cloaking bubble still active around me. The twin moons had risen fully now. In their light, I could see further into the forest. More of the giant glowing trees, strange formations in the distance, and the shapes of other creatures moving between them. I was trapped in an alien world with nothing but experimental tech and my own skills to keep me alive. And somewhere, I needed to find a way back. I ducked into the narrow opening between two rock faces, scraping my shoulder in the process. The cloaking field from my wrist device had lasted just long enough to lose the pack of creatures that had been tracking me since dawn. The battery icon blinked red now, useless until it recharged. 3 days of constant movement had taken its toll. My legs ached from climbing over fallen tree trunks and wading through ankle-deep pools of glowing water. Sleep came in 20-minute bursts while wedged into branches high above the forest floor. Food consisted of nutrition bars that had materialized in the backpack after its transformation, tasteless but filling. The passage got wider as I moved deeper. My phone's flashlight showed what looked like a proper cave system, not just a crack in the rocks. The air was cooler here and easier to breathe than the thick, humid air outside. Day 3, I muttered to my phone as I recorded. Found what might be decent shelter, first real break since arriving. I moved my light across the ground, looking for any signs of those creatures, the deer wolves as I called them. The stone floor was clean except for some dust. The cave got narrow again before opening up into a bigger room. My light couldn't reach all the walls, but the ceiling was pretty high up. I could hear water dripping somewhere in the dark. I walked carefully, making sure each step was safe. Breaking an ankle here would be a disaster with my limited supplies. My light caught something shiny about 30 feet ahead. It was metal. Definitely not natural in this place. I went closer, looking around as I moved. My light showed a small pile of equipment on the floor. There was a torn bag, some metal containers, and what looked like research tools. Then my light found the body. He was sitting against the cave wall with his head down on his chest. He had on what used to be hiking gear, heavy pants, boots, and what was left of a jacket. Most of the flesh was gone, leaving behind bones held together by dried bits of skin. "Jesus," I whispered, instinctively stepping back. Death wasn't new to me. I'd seen bodies on mountain rescues gone wrong, in wilderness accidents, even a drowning once. But this was different. This was a human being who had died alone in a place no human was ever meant to be. I forced myself to approach, covering my nose against the stale, musty odor of decay. The body wasn't fresh. Weeks old at minimum, maybe longer. The cool, dry cave air had preserved it somewhat, but nature had still taken its course. A patch on what remained of his jacket sleeve caught my attention. A logo. I leaned closer, directing my light. A circular emblem with Cyrillic lettering and what looked like a stylized atom or molecule in the center. Some kind of Russian research institute. "Who were you?" I asked the corpse, as if it might answer. I swept my light across the scattered equipment, research tools I couldn't name, empty water containers, a cracked tablet with a black screen. Partly under the body was a metal case, about the size of a hardcover book. Unlike the other stuff, it looked pretty good. A heavy-duty, waterproof container with latches. I put my phone down, light pointing up for some brightness, and carefully reached for the case. It came out easily, the body moving slightly as I pulled. The latches opened with 2 clicks. Inside, safe from the weather, was a thick journal covered in synthetic material and several folded papers with handwritten notes and diagrams, all in Russian. I picked up the journal carefully. The pages were full of dense Cyrillic writing mixed with technical drawings. One page showed what was definitely the blue portal orb, with measurements and notes. Another had what looked like mapping coordinates or triangulation points. I couldn't read any of it. "Damn it," I muttered. Next to where the case had been, something else caught my eye. A wrist device similar to mine, but more complex. Where mine had a single display panel, this one had multiple components built into the band itself. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. Dead, like everything else. But the design was obviously from the same source as my own gear. On a hunch, I pressed it against my own wrist device. The contact points aligned, and to my surprise, a faint glow came from both units. My device's battery indicator jumped from red to yellow. Power transfer. I waited until the process completed, then checked out the new device. It was definitely better than mine. More indicators, more icons on the display. One of them looked like a document with lines of text. I tapped it. A holographic interface appeared above my wrist, showing what looked like a translation program. I held up one of the journal pages. The device scanned it, processing. After a few seconds, the Russian text on the display was replaced with English. Day 17. The atmospheric composition matches initial readings. Oxygen levels at 22.4% work fine for humans, though the higher nitrogen makes breathing feel a bit different. Water sources we've tested have minerals not found on Earth, but they're safe to drink in small amounts. Scientific observations. Detailed notes about this world. I flipped through more pages, using the device to translate sections at random. Day 21. Third encounter with the 4-legged predators. They hunt mostly by smell. They don't see well during the day, but they see better than humans in the dark. The branches on their heads soak up the natural glow around them, probably to help them hide. I turned to the journal's first page, looking for who wrote it. The translation appeared. Research Journal of Dr. Alexei Kuznetsov, Project Threshold, Entry 1. Transport worked. The displacement took about 3.2 seconds, shorter than we expected based on our tests. No immediate physical damage except feeling dizzy and sick. The return portal didn't show up when it was supposed to, following backup plan and setting up camp to wait for another extraction. I looked at the body and realized Alexei hadn't just ended up here by accident. He came here on purpose for this Project Threshold. I continued scanning through the journal, translating key sections. Day 24. Still no contact from base. The emergency beacon doesn't show any sign that our messages are getting through. Starting to think the barrier between dimensions blocks normal communication signals. I flipped forward several pages. Day 30. Water supply almost gone. Moving northeast toward the bigger river system we saw during first flyovers. The Virkol packs are showing up more often and getting braver. The way they act suggests they now see humans as food. Virkol. So that's what they were called. The entries grew shorter, more urgent as I moved toward the end of the journal. Day 42. My 15th day in this cave system. Leg wound looks infected even though I used antiseptics. The Virkal are still outside, walking around. They remember. They wait. Day 43. Petrov has a lot to answer for. 17 of us sent through. 15 before me confirmed dead. Yulia was the last. She worked with me. He told her the same lies. Calibration, equipment testing, 6-day extraction, all made up. I froze at the mention of Petrov. Mikhail Petrov. The man who'd hired me, who'd sent me here. I scanned more desperately now, searching for answers. Day 44. Translation software finished. Have confirmed 3 potential return points within 50-kilometer radius. The thinning between dimensions happens at specific geometric spots. The closest matches described coordinates in Nikolai's theoretical models. Pages filled with calculations and coordinates followed, along with rough maps sketched from memory. I couldn't make sense of most of it, but one diagram stood out. A rock formation shaped like a hand reaching upward, with a drawing of the portal orb hovering above the middle finger. The final entry looked shakier than the others, the handwriting getting worse. Day 47. Fever getting worse. No strength to try northeast passage to the hand, 20-kilometer minimum. Virkal Alpha has stayed nearby for 2 days, the biggest one we've seen. It knows I'm here. The others brought it something of mine, smelled it. Their hunting is smarter than I first thought. If found, northeast. Rock formation. Hand. Alignment happens during third moon phase. Important. The activator must be at the right height. All previous attempts failed because they activated it at ground level. The doorway opens above. 17 of us. Let one return to tell the truth. That was the last entry. Alexei had died here, alone, with the knowledge of how to get home but without the strength to make the journey. I sat back on my heels, letting the journal close in my lap. 17 people. 17 human beings sent through the portal for experiments. None had returned. Until me, possibly. If I could reach this hand formation that Alexei had identified. I stood and began gathering anything useful from Alexei's supplies. The advanced wrist device, a small toolkit, what looked like signal flares but with a weird design, a water purification system better than the tablets in my pack. As I worked, I thought about what I'd learned. This wasn't a survival test, it was human experimentation. Mikhail hadn't expected me to return. He'd expected me to die here, like all the others. The journal went into my backpack, along with the other usable equipment. I owed it to Alexei, to all of them, to make it back and expose what Mikhail had done. I pointed my light toward the back of the cave. I needed rest, real sleep, before trying a 20-kilometer hike through an area I knew was full of Virkal. The cave would keep me safe for the night. As I moved away, I paused, looking back at Alexei's remains. I couldn't bury him here. The best I could do was survive. Reach the hand. Find the portal home. And make sure Mikhail Petrov paid for the 17 lives he'd sacrificed for his research. 20 kilometers northeast. A rock formation, like a hand. I had a destination now, and more importantly, a way home. I splashed through the shallow blue stream, counting steps to stay focused. 5 days of constant movement had worn me down. My boots squelched with each step, soaked from wading through too many of these glowing waterways. The backpack technology had kept me alive, but just barely. My water bottle lay empty in the side pocket. Dehydration wasn't an option, not with the miles still ahead. I crouched at the stream's edge and pulled out my wrist device. "Let's see if you'll kill me," I muttered, hovering the scanner over the flowing water. The display flashed yellow, not green. Translation showed up in holographic text. Potable. Yes. Toxicity. Low mineral content. High warning. Neurological effects with extended consumption. I dipped my bottle and took a careful sip. The water tasted like metal, like I was drinking from an old pipe. Not great, but better than being thirsty. 4 small gulps would have to last until the next safe water spot. I capped the bottle and stood up, my knees aching when I moved. The cloaking field around me flickered for a second, battery getting low again. The ground got steeper as I kept heading northeast, following Alexei's coordinates. The big glowing trees weren't as thick here, and I could see hills covered in plants that looked like ferns. They curled away when I walked past them. It still weirded me out that plants would react like they were scared of me. By noon, I'd climbed high enough to see farther. Then I spotted it, about 10 miles away, sticking up from the trees. A rock that looked just like a hand reaching toward the sky. "The hand," I whispered. Alexei's notes were right. I took another sip of water, feeling a weird tingle on my tongue. The alien minerals tasted strong, but I needed to get to that rock formation. The growl came from behind me. Low and rumbling, felt more than heard. I turned slowly. It stood at the tree line. Massive. At least twice the size of any Virkal I'd seen before. Its long body balanced on 6 jointed legs with claws that dug into the dirt. The antlers on its head branched out like spikes. Its black eyes stared right at me. My cloaking field was active. It shouldn't have been able to see me. The creature lowered its head, nostrils flaring as it sniffed the air. Then it took a slow step forward. It could smell me through the cloak. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on it. The alpha followed, not rushing, but clearly hunting, playing with its food. When it got within 20 yards, I turned and ran. The forest blurred as I sprinted downhill, jumping over logs and ducking branches. The alpha smashed through the trees behind me, moving faster than anything that big should be able to. It was catching up with each second. My foot caught on a root. I tumbled down a steep slope, covering my head with my arms until I slammed against a tree. Pain shot through my ribs. The alpha showed up at the top of the slope, its huge body black against the alien sky. It pawed the ground once, then started picking its way down. Not rushing now, but moving like it knew I couldn't escape. My wrist device beeped softly. The display flashed red. The cloaking field had stopped working. I dug into the backpack, my fingers grabbing disc-shaped objects, sound generators that had appeared during one of the pack's changes. I turned one on and threw it far to my left. It bounced once, then started making a high-pitched noise that was barely audible. The alpha stopped, turning its head toward the sound. I turned on a second generator and threw it in the opposite direction, then slipped behind the tree as the creature looked back and forth between the competing noises. For 5 precious seconds, I had a chance. I ran, staying in the thickest bushes, using every trick I knew. Move against the wind, step on stone when possible, stay out of sight. The alpha roared behind me, a sound like tearing metal. When it realized I was getting away, I didn't look back. I could see the hand through gaps in the trees, getting bigger as I got closer. Hours ran together. I used the remaining sound generators carefully to buy time. The alpha never quit. Sometimes I'd get far enough ahead to lose sight of it, but it always found my trail again, never giving up. As it got dark, the light changed from purple to deep indigo. The bottom of the rock formation was right ahead, stone fingers sticking up from the ground like parts of a broken statue. Up close, each finger was at least 100 feet tall, with steep sides and few handholds. Alexei's journal had mentioned the portal opening above, not at the bottom. Above. I needed to climb. The alpha's howl echoed through the forest behind me, closer now, minutes away. I walked around the formation, looking for the easiest way up. The thumb had more bumps and ledges than the other fingers. I tightened the backpack straps across my shoulders and started climbing. Rock climbing was never my thing, but years in the wilderness had taught me the basics. Test each hold, use legs more than arms, keep 3 points of contact at all times. The stone felt oddly smooth under my fingers, making the climb harder than I expected. 50 feet up, my arms burned. I stopped on a narrow ledge, pressing my back against the rock to catch my breath. Below, the Alpha came out of the forest. It walked around the base, looking up with those black eyes. Then it put one clawed foot on the stone and started to climb. I hadn't expected that. The creature's weird limbs found grip where there seemed to be none, its body moving in a strange way as it climbed the vertical face easily. I pushed upward with new urgency, ignoring my aching muscles. The ledge got narrower as I climbed higher, eventually becoming just small bumps barely wide enough for my toes. 80 feet up, I reached what looked like the tip of the thumb, a flat area about the size of a coffee table. I pulled myself onto it, rolling away from the edge as gusts of wind tried to push me off, and found nothing. No portal, no activation point, just smooth stone under a darkening sky. The Alpha was 60 feet below and climbing steadily. I frantically searched the flat surface, running my hands over the stone. Alexi's journal had mentioned alignment during the third moon phase. I looked up. Both moons were visible now, but neither was full. Was there a third I couldn't see yet? My fingers touched the pocket where I'd put the metal disc, the one that had created the original portal back in the clearing. I pulled it out. The surface caught the moonlight, showing concentric circles etched into the metal that I hadn't noticed before. The Alpha was 40 feet below. I could hear its claws scraping against stone. I pressed the disc against the rock. Nothing happened. "Come on," I muttered, trying different spots. "Where's the damn door?" The Alpha was 30 feet below, its antlered head becoming visible over the ledge. I held the disc up to the moonlight again. The circles weren't perfectly concentric. They were offset slightly, creating a pattern that looked almost like a fingerprint. I looked over the rock surface again and noticed a slight depression near the center, a whorl in the stone that looked like a giant fingerprint. I pressed the disc into it. The metal got warm against my palm. A faint blue glow came from between my fingers, spreading outward in ripples across the stone. The Alpha was 20 feet below. The blue light got stronger, forming a sphere that floated 3 feet above the rock surface. The center cleared, showing a window to somewhere else, a snow-covered landscape under a gray sky. Russia. The Alpha's claws appeared at the edge of my perch, followed by its massive head. Those black eyes locked onto mine as it pulled itself up the final feet. I didn't hesitate. I dove through the portal, feeling that same twisting sensation as the world warped around me. For a heartbeat, I was nowhere, in a void of swirling blue energy. Then gravity took hold, and I crashed face first into knee-deep snow. I felt freezing cold after days in the humid alien forest. I rolled onto my back, gasping as freezing air filled my lungs. Above me, the portal flickered once and vanished, taking with it any sign of the monster that had nearly caught me. I lay there in the snow, every muscle hurting with exhaustion, staring up at the plain gray sky. I pushed myself to my knees in the snow, coughing as my lungs adjusted to the thin, icy air. My body tingled like I'd stuck my fingers in an electrical socket. 6 days in that alien jungle had left me unprepared for Russian winter. Blood trickled down my forearm from a deep gash. My ribs screamed with each breath. Not Virkol food, though. Not dead. I dug the satellite phone from my pocket with trembling fingers. The display glowed in the growing darkness. 6 days had passed since I'd stepped through that first portal. Andre would arrive tomorrow, expecting to collect whatever remained of me. Using a nearby pine for support, I pushed myself upright. The mountains looked like ones I knew well enough to orient myself. The original clearing couldn't be more than 3 miles west. Day 6, I said, pulling out my regular phone to record. Battery at 12%, enough for essentials. I made it back through a portal from another world. Mikhail Petrov sent me and at least 16 others to test his technology. I panned the camera across the snowy landscape, then turned it on myself to document my injuries and tattered clothing. I found one of the previous test subjects, Russian scientist Alexei Kuznetsov. His journal detailed everything. This isn't product testing, it's human experimentation. Walking hurt more than expected. The snow reached my knees in places, and after days of running from alien predators, my legs threatened to buckle with each step. I marked trees with small notches from my knife to hold my course. Night fell quickly, the temperature dropping with it. Without proper winter gear, I'd freeze before reaching the original clearing. I needed shelter. A fallen pine created a natural windbreak. I kicked away snow beneath it and used branches to construct a crude roof. Not pretty, but it beat freezing to death. Sleep came in snatches. Every crack of a branch jerked me awake, my brain still listening for veer call howls. When first light broke, I continued west, moving faster as my body readjusted to Earth's gravity and air. By mid-morning, I recognized landmarks, the lightning-struck tree, the rock outcropping that resembled a turtle. Almost there. I reached the clearing shortly before noon. Nothing had changed. Same circle of trees, same fallen log where I'd first examined the empty backpack. No sign anyone had visited since I left. The backpack had returned to its simple form after crossing back. The advanced wrist device still worked, though many features had gone dark without the alien environment to monitor. I need to hide this, I told my phone camera, holding up Alexei's journal. If Petrov's people find it on me, it'll disappear. Along with me, probably. I searched the edges of the clearing until I found what I needed, an old pine with a hole in the trunk about 5 feet up. I stuffed the journal, the wrist device, and one of the metal portal discs deep inside, then used my knife to carve a small X on the bark that looked like regular tree damage. With my stuff safely hidden, I sat down on the fallen log to wait. My phone battery died around sunset, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the growing cold. I wanted to stay awake, but ended up falling asleep anyway. The crunch of boots on snow jerked me awake. Dawn had barely broken, the forest still dim in the early light. Andre stood at the edge of the clearing, rifle across his chest. 2 men stood beside him, also carrying guns, their breath making clouds in the cold air. "He's here," one called in accented English. Andre's usually blank face showed genuine shock. His eyes widened as he exchanged quick glances with his companions. They'd come expecting a corpse, if anything at all. I didn't move as they approached, keeping my expression vacant and posture slumped. Better if they thought me broken. "You survived," Andre said flatly, composure returning. I nodded weakly, playing up my exhaustion. Wasn't hard. "The pack," Andre demanded, gesturing. I handed over my backpack without arguing. He checked it thoroughly, looking through all compartments, which now looked normal and empty. The technology had either hidden itself or shut down. "Can you walk?" he asked. "Think so," I mumbled, making my voice raspy. 2 men helped me up, though I noticed they kept their hands near their weapons. We hiked through the forest, following a path I hadn't noticed when we first arrived. After about an hour, we reached a dirt road where the same heavy-duty SUV waited. The drive was quiet. I leaned against the window, pretending to be half asleep while actually taking note of every turn and landmark. We headed southwest, moving from the woods to regular roads. None of them asked me about what happened. They talked in Russian sometimes, keeping their voices low. I heard Mikhail's name several times, and something that sounded like impossible. By late afternoon, we pulled up to a big gated property off the main road. Stone walls ran around the edges, and the main house was made of dark stone and wood. A woman wearing medical scrubs met us at the door. She took me to a room with an exam table and medical equipment like you'd see in a nice doctor's office. "Your injuries," she said in heavily accented English, gesturing for me to sit. I complied, wincing genuinely as she cleaned the gash on my arm and bandaged my ribs. She gave me painkillers and water, then left me alone with a pile of clean clothes. The room had cameras, Small ones, but obvious enough. One in the ceiling corner, another disguised as part of a light fixture. I changed while keeping my expression blank as if I hadn't noticed. 20 minutes later, the door opened. Mikhail entered alone, closing it behind him. He wore an expensive gray suit that matched his silver hair. His face showed nothing as he looked me over, but his eyes had an intensity I hadn't seen during our first meeting. "Remarkable," he said finally. "No one has ever returned." I said nothing. He placed a sleek metal briefcase on the examination table and clicked it open. Inside, stacks of cash, the promised $500,000. "You've earned this," he said, "and I'm prepared to match it for your discretion." He tapped the case. "Another $500,000 for your silence." I looked at the money, then back at him. 17 others. His expression hardened slightly, the only indication my words had hit their mark. "You found Kuznetsov's remains," he stated, not a question. "And his journal," I lied, watching for his reaction. Better he think I had it with me. Mikhail's posture got a bit stiffer. "Scientific progress requires sacrifice," he replied coldly. "You've proven the technology works. The portal can be traveled through both ways." "Human experimentation," I said, keeping my voice steady. 17 people. 17 pioneers, he corrected, face empty of emotion. "Their contributions will be remembered when we reshape humanity's future." "By stealing resources from another world?" I asked, testing how much he'd reveal. A thin smile appeared on his lips. "By expanding our reach beyond the limitations of our dying planet." He gestured to the briefcase. "The offer stands. $1 million total. A life-changing sum for a few days of discomfort." I looked at the money again. Enough to pay off my mortgage, fund my retirement, never worry about sponsors or views again. "And if I refuse?" I asked. Mikhail's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Then we'd have a problem that needs fixing right away." I stared at the money in the briefcase. $1 million in neat banded stacks, half for surviving, half for keeping quiet. "I'll take what I've earned," I said, closing the case with just the original payment inside. "The rest, I need to think about it." Mikhail's eyebrows twitched, the only crack in his mask. "Of course. Consider carefully." He pointed toward the door. "We'll discuss details over dinner." A man with a super straight back led me through the house. Every wall had paintings that probably cost more than my truck. The guest room could have fit my entire living room inside it. Big bed, sitting area, bathroom floor warm against my feet. The door clicked shut. I didn't move, just let my eyes do the work. Camera in the corner, not trying to hide. Another one tucked into the bookshelf. Listening device under the nightstand, barely visible even when you knew where to look. 4 years in military communications, intelligence teaches you things. What to spot, how to handle it. The briefcase landed on the bed with a soft thump. I checked my borrowed clothes for trackers. Nothing obvious. In the bathroom, I cranked the shower hot, letting steam and noise build. The bug from the nightstand came off clean. I crushed it under my boot heel, then did the same to the one behind the mirror. Cameras stayed put. Taking them out would tell Mikhail too much. My watch showed almost 5. Dinner at 7, based on the staff movements downstairs. 2 hours to work with. The guard at the hall's end nodded when I approached. "Computer?" I asked. "Need to check my channel." He pointed downstairs. "Library, first floor, east wing." The library tried too hard. Leather books nobody read. Heavy drapes. Fancy desk with a laptop worth a month of my rent. 2 cameras watched from the corners. Good. Let them see me being predictable. YouTube loaded fast on expensive internet. I made a show of clicking through my analytics. Under the desk, my fingers found my backup phone, the one Andre's men missed, hidden in my boot's hollow heel. Battery at 16%, enough for what mattered. The estate's Wi-Fi connected without passwords. 3 compressed files went out to secure emails, old contacts who wouldn't ask why. Cloud storage would leave tracks. This wouldn't. Upload, 4 minutes. Cover story, 20 more of actual video checking. Fresh clothes waited in my room when I returned. Dark pants, button-down shirt, the kind of casual rich people wear when they're trying not to look rich. I changed, moved the $500,000 to my pocket and waited for dinner. Different guard, same stiff posture. He walked me downstairs at 7 sharp. The dining room stretched longer than a bowling lane, only 2 places set, each at opposite ends. Classic power move. Mikhail sat swirling something amber in a crystal glass. "James," he said, like we were old friends. "I trust the accommodations meet your standards? Better than sleeping in a tree while alien wolves tried to eat me." A server brought over water and food. The steak looked small on the giant white plate. It was fancy looking. Mikhail watched me take a bite before speaking. "You're wondering why I chose you. Not really. The meat cut clean, perfect pink inside. Your survival skills made you ideal, but your public profile creates perfect deniability." His smile never touched his eyes. If James Walker disappeared after accepting a mysterious Russian offer, your fans would gossip, but no one important would look too hard. No family asking questions, no company demanding answers. Precisely. He sipped his drink. The portals were a discovery, not an invention. My team found the first one 5 years ago in Siberia, a natural tier. 3 expeditions disappeared before we learned to control them. I kept eating. Let him fill the silence. "Earth has problems." Mikhail spread his hands. "Resources drying up, climate shifts, too many people." He leaned forward. "That world holds minerals we depleted centuries ago. Plants with compounds that could change medicine forever. So you're saving humanity." My voice stayed flat. "By feeding 17 people to another dimension." His face hardened. "Pioneers face risks. The first astronauts, test pilots, vaccine volunteers. History forgives necessary costs." Movement caught my eye while he talked. Guards moving around the room's edges, one by each door, another near the window. Not casual, not random. My fork clinked against the plate. "Bathroom?" The slightest pause. "Through there." Mikhail nodded toward a door across the room. Everyone watched me as I crossed the open space. The bathroom matched the rest of the house. Marble sink, gold fixtures, towels you'd feel guilty using. The door locked with a solid click. Small window, barely wider than my wrist. No exit there. Plan B, then. Medicine cabinet had the basics: aspirin, bandages, mouthwash. Under the sink, the cleaning stuff: bleach, ammonia. Basic chemistry doesn't care if you're rich or poor. Mix bleach and ammonia, you get chloramine vapor. Not deadly in small amounts, but it clears a room fast. Heat speeds it up. I put a hand towel soaked in the mixture in the heating vent. More bleach and ammonia wrapped in toilet paper went by the door. Then I waited. 40 seconds later, alarms screamed through the house. Not regular smoke detectors, chemical sensors. Rich people's safety features working in my favor. The bathroom door opened a crack. Dining room in controlled chaos. Guards talking into radios. Staff rushing around. No Mikhail in sight. I moved against the flow of people heading toward the alarm. 3 rights brought me to a service hallway, then outside. The garage was away from the main house, 50 yards of open ground. No guards visible, all pulled to the main alarm. Inside were 6 vehicles that cost more than my house. Keys hung on a board by the door, labeled in neat handwriting. The Mercedes fob had MGLC written on its tag. Newest model in the row. I slid behind the wheel, dropped the briefcase on the passenger seat, and hit the start button. The engine woke up quiet as a whisper. Lights off, I eased out of the garage and took the service drive around the property edge. No gates or guards, just a turn onto an empty country road. Way too easy. Signs pointed toward Moscow, 3 hours southwest. The American embassy first, then people who couldn't be bought. My backup phone caught signal in patches between hills. The emails had gone through. 2 hours passed before headlights appeared in my mirror. They stayed exactly the same distance behind me for 15 minutes straight, never closing, never falling back. Someone knew what they were doing. Speed up, they matched. Slow down, they matched again. The border checkpoint looked smaller than expected. 2 booths and a gate arm. I braked at the stop line, waiting for the trap to spring. The guard barely glanced at the car, then waved me through without checking papers. My phone lit up with a message. The world isn't ready for this truth, but I respect your survival skills. Go home, Mr. Walker. We'll meet again. Meet. The border disappeared in my rear view. $500,000 sat heavy beside me. Mikhail had let me go. For now. I started planning my next moves. Get the journal, check the evidence, find allies who could help without getting me killed. The game had just started. I'd survived another world with nothing but experimental tech and stubborn will. This was just another kind of wilderness.